Hello and welcome to Indus News. Live from Islamabad, I'm Naila Shuja and these are the headlines. Pakistan says India was directly involved in the Lahore blast on the 23rd of June that left 3 people dead and 24 wounded. National Security Advisor Dr. Moeed Yusuf was addressing a press conference along the Punjab Police Chief and Information Minister Fawad Chaudhry. Moeed Yusuf said forensic analysis suggests involvement of Indian intelligence agency RAW. He said the main mastermind of the incident is an Indian citizen and he belongs to RAW. In Afghanistan, the Taliban claim to have captured 5 more districts in the Kandahar, Badakhshan and Farah provinces. Meanwhile, the Afghan Defense Ministry says security forces have killed about 130 fighters across 7 provinces. In the Philippines, the death toll from a military plane crash on Jolo Island in Sulu province has risen to 29. In a statement, the army said 50 people were taken to the hospital, leaving 17 unaccounted for. The military chief says the C-130 missed the runway while trying to regain power. In Myanmar, security forces killed at least 25 people in a confrontation with opponents of the military rule in the Sagaing region on Friday. Speaking to the foreign media, residents said the military trucks entered their area and opened fire on a village to flush out local resistance. According to an activist group, as many as 890 people have been killed and thousands detained since the military seized power in February. Brazil has reported more than 1,600 deaths from COVID-19 and over 54,000 cases overnight. In Pakistan, the virus has claimed 29 lives and infected over 1,200 people in the past 24 hours. Globally, there are 3.9 million fatalities and over 183 million cases so far. For more news and details, stay tuned. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back. Pakistan says India was directly involved in the Lahore blast on the 23rd of June that left 3 people dead and 24 wounded. National Security Advisor Dr. Moeed Yusuf was addressing a press conference alongside the Punjab Police Chief and Information Minister Fawad Chaudhry. Yusuf said Pakistan security agencies have concrete evidence and intelligence that points direct Indian sponsorship of terrorism. He said forensic analysis suggests the involvement of Indian intelligence agency RAW in the terror attack. Yusuf added that the main mastermind of the incident is an Indian citizen associated with RAW. He said India's use of territory and people of third countries is not new, adding that Pakistan has been consistently reminding the world of Indian actions. For more on this, we are joined by Ali Sarwar Naqvi, former ambassador and analyst from Islamabad. Thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. Now, Pakistan says India was directly behind the terror attack in Lahore last month. What steps should Pakistan take to counter India's nefarious designs?
Yes, thank you. You see, the Indian involvement in terrorism is not new. It has been going on for many years, I think. In fact, I read an article that the 2001 attack on the Indian Parliament was also engineered by Indian RAW, and the blame was put on Pakistan. So it goes back many years. However, now it has become quite a big concerted program of sponsoring terrorism in Pakistan, and the latest evidence is that of the Lahore bomb blast, where on 23rd of June, where a vehicle carrying very heavy load of gun powder and ammunition was blown up near the house of a targeted political person. So the Indian involvement needs to be exposed, and I think Dr. Mohit Yusuf's press conference, along with the presence of the Information Minister, Mr. Fuad Chaudhry, has done that. They have exposed the entire incident and all the details that have been unearthed by our agencies and our law enforcement officials in linking them, the mastermind, and in exposing the mastermind and showing his links with Indian RAW, the Indian spy agency. So there is incontrovertible evidence of Indian involvement in this entire incident. And then India was exposed recently by the EU Disinfo Lab, which is a neutral body and has nothing to do with this region, but they have exposed fake Indian NGOs, Indian wire services, and Indian fake organizations, which have all been carrying out all kinds of fifth-generation warfare, of disinformation, and of promoting nefarious activities in Pakistan. So India is acting highly irresponsibly, and it needs to be exposed. And then the international community should be, one should demand of the international community that it should immediately take this matter up with the Indians. We should not do it through the Security Council, which is highly politicized, but we should take up with individual countries the very fair request of their intervention in the matter to prevent the destabilization of this region.
All right, Mr. Naqvi, now the most familiar and undeniable face of India's state sponsorship of terrorism against Pakistan is Kulbhushan Jadhav. What role can the international community play to stop India from sponsoring and financing terrorist activities in Pakistan?
Yeah. Well, I think the international community has to impress upon India that it must act responsibly as a member state of the United Nations and as a member of the international community, and it should not do things which would be destabilizing for our region, because in this atmosphere of all kinds of unstable factors that are at play, particularly due to the American withdrawal from Afghanistan, the Indian actions of this kind have further aggravated the situation. And then Dr. Mohit Yusuf also spoke about these reports of drone flights, so in Kashmir and also one here in Islamabad, and said that this is all fake. There are no such drone flights or drones moving about in these areas, and India is trying to divert attention by creating these reports which are totally baseless and false.
All right, Mr. Naqvi, don't you think that India's state sponsorship of terrorism in Pakistan will negatively affect the Afghan peace process?
Yes, I think so. I think it would negatively affect the Afghan peace process and the efforts to restore peace and stability in Afghanistan. It would also affect the bilateral relations between India and Pakistan, it would create more tension. And I think India should be mindful of the fact that China is also interested in the peace and stability of the region and would look at this most unfavorably. I think, in fact, one of the things that we should do, that's my own suggestion, is that we should take it up with the Chinese government and point out to them and share with them our findings and point out to them what India has been doing and what it did on June 23rd.
All right. Former Ambassador Alisa Naqvi, thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. Now, moving on, in Afghanistan, the Taliban claim to have captured 5 more districts in the Kandahar, Farah, and Badakhshan province. In a tweet, the group spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid named Panjwai, Farah Rud, and Bahrak, Kohistan, and Kufe-Ab districts. Kandahar Provincial Council had confirmed the fall of Panjwai, but accused the government forces of intentionally withdrawing. Meanwhile, as the Taliban and Kabul's forces continue to fight, Afghan Defense Ministry said the security forces have killed about 130 fighters over the past 24 hours, whereas the Taliban claimed to have seized more than 100 out of nearly 400 districts in the country so far. Pakistan says the United States is leaving without settling the Afghan issue. Talking to the media, advisor to Prime Minister on National Security, Dr. Moeed Yusuf, called for a political solution. Yusuf reiterated that Pakistan will not allow anyone to use its soil against Kabul. The advisor highlighted that the Afghan government and the Taliban must reach a compromise. Yusuf said Pakistan is committed to durable peace in Afghanistan and cannot bear a civil war-like situation in the country. He also urged Washington and Kabul to recognize Islamabad's peace efforts. In the Philippines, at least 29 people have been killed as a military plane crashed on Jolo Island in Sulu province. In a statement, Defense Minister Deflin Lorenzana said 50 people have been rescued so far. Lorenzana said the plane carried 92 people, including 3 pilots and 5 crew. Army Chief General Silitro Sobijana told media that the C-130 missed the runway while trying to land. Sobijana said the aircraft crashed near a village in the town of Patikul. In Myanmar, at least 25 anti-junta fighters and civilians have been killed during clashes with the military in the country's Sagaing region. The region has been the site of multiple skirmishes between local defense forces and the military. Speaking to foreign media, residents said military trucks entered their area and opened fire on a village to flush out local resistance. But state-run media said that the military was patrolling the area when they were ambushed. The ruling junta has struggled to impose its authority since taking power on the 1st of February. According to an activist group, as many as 890 people have been killed so far and thousands detained. Israeli warplanes have bombed the Gaza Strip, violating a fragile ceasefire with Hamas yet again. The Israel Defense Forces allege that the attack was a response to incendiary balloons launched from the enclave. The Israeli army claims it struck a weapons manufacturing facility and a rocket launcher used by Hamas. Medics say 1 man was critically wounded. The occupation forces have also shot dead a civilian in a village in south of Nablus City. A military spokesperson says they were trying to disperse confrontations between Israeli settlers and Palestinians. Palestine's Ministry of Health says 2 other civilians were injured in the clashes in the West Bank. Russia says a British warship's recent incursion into the waters near Crimea is a kind of move that merits a tough response from Moscow. This comes a day after Russian warplanes practiced bombing enemy ships in the Black Sea during training exercises. Last week, Moscow challenged the right of HMS Defender to pass through waters near Crimea, which London said it had every right to do. Russia said the vessel had illegally entered its territorial waters and accused London of a provocation. Moscow has said that it could bomb UK's naval vessels if there are more such actions by the British Navy of Crimea. Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine in 2014, but most of the world still recognizes it as a part of Ukraine. Brazil has reported more than 1,600 deaths from COVID-19 and over 54,000 cases overnight. Globally, there are at least 3.9 million fatalities and over 183 million cases. More in this report.
The WHO has warned that the world is in a dangerous stage of the pandemic as the Delta variant rages in around 98 countries. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says vaccine availability around the world is being outpaced by variants. Australia's New South Wales state reported a fall in New Delhi coronavirus cases following 2 days of record infections. Officials implored Sydney residents to follow rules so they could end a lockdown next week.
So whilst the results overnight are very pleasing, there's no doubt the impact of the lockdown has been evidenced. However, to keep that trend going, we need to make sure people don't give in and don't break those rules we've put in place. They're there for a reason. And yes, it's great, sunny outdoors. We'd much prefer you to go outdoors in a COVID-safe way than go to those riskier indoor settings.
The U.S. is set to miss President Joe Biden's target of vaccinating 70% of adults by July 4. More than 605,000 people have died from COVID-19 in the country so far. In Brazil, thousands demanded the impeachment of President Jair Bolsonaro over his pandemic response. The country faces the world's second deadliest outbreak after the U.S., compounded by a slow vaccine rollout. Portugal says it hopes to vaccinate a further 1.7 million people in the next 2 weeks as the highly transmissible Delta variant spreads. Whereas in Asia, India has reported over 43,000 cases and 955 deaths in the last 24 hours, pushing the toll over 402,000.
In Pakistan, coronavirus has claimed 29 more lives in the past 24 hours. The health ministry said the virus has infected over 1,200 people overnight. The ministry said out of over 32,000 active cases, more than 1,800 are critical. Pakistan has so far registered over 22,400 deaths and more than 962,000 cases. Meanwhile, more than 907,000 people have recovered. Officials say the Moderna vaccine will be available at designated vaccination centers from Monday. Pakistan has received 700,000 more doses of the Sinopharm vaccine from China. Another 1.3 million doses are expected to arrive in the country on Sunday. It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has expressed deep concern over the situation in Ethiopia's Tigray region. Around 400,000 people are in famine condition, with nearly 2 million on the brink of it. Guterres said a real ceasefire is essential to pave the way for dialogue leading to a political solution. He noted that the presence of foreign troops is an aggravating factor for confrontation. The Secretary General called for a full humanitarian access to the whole territory. He termed the destruction of civilian infrastructure totally unacceptable. Earlier, the UN warned that the conflict could rapidly flare in Tigray again amid the presence of foreign troops. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has opened a strategic naval base on the Mediterranean Sea to secure shipping lines. In a statement, the presidency said that the base will focus on securing the country's northern and western fronts. The base lies some 160 miles west of Alexandria towards the border with Libya. State media said that it includes an airstrip and a 1,000-meter-long pier. An inaugural ceremony was attended by the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Egypt has 3 other naval bases in the Mediterranean and 1 in the Red Sea. Former U.S. President Donald Trump has condemned New York prosecutors over charges against his company and financial advisor. The Trump Organization and its chief financial officer have pleaded not guilty to tax fraud. Addressing thousands of supporters in Sarasota, Florida, Trump alleged a prosecutory misconduct. He accused the authorities of politically victimizing his family, employees, and company. Trump denounced President Joe Biden's policies and repeated his claims of fraud in the 2020 election. The former president urged his supporters to back Republicans in their bid to regain control of Congress next year. President Joe Biden has directed United States intelligence agencies to investigate the latest ransomware attack. The colossal attack hit hundreds of American businesses and led to suspicions of Russian gang involvement. Talking to reporters in Michigan, Biden said that the government is not certain who is behind the attack. He said the initial thinking is that it is not the Russian government. However, the president reiterated that Washington will respond if the investigation points to Moscow.
The fact is that I directed the intelligence community to give me a deep dive on what's happened, and I'll know better tomorrow. And if it is either with the knowledge of and or a consequence of Russia, then I told Putin we will respond. And
you didn't tell him already, sir?
No, I haven't called because we're not certain. The initial thinking was it was not the Russian government. But we're not sure yet.
China has started building the world's largest hypergravity centrifuge by capacity in Hangzhou city of Zhejiang province. The pit for the main units is expected to be completed by the end of this November. The centrifuge is designed to have a capacity of at least 1,500 gravity tons. It will be the most extensive multidisciplinary experimental platform for China's major science projects. Currently, the U.S. owns the world's most powerful centrifuge with 1,200 gravity tons. At least 2 people have been killed after a tropical storm Elsa battered the southern coast of the Dominican Republic. Officials say the deaths were recorded in Bajaruco province after a wall collapsed due to heavy winds. Some flooding was also reported in the San Cristobal province, prompting about 100 evacuations. However, the storm is slowing down as it passed between Haiti and Jamaica. The U.S. National Hurricane Center says Elsa is now clocking maximum sustained winds at 110 kilometers per hour. It is expected to move across central and western Cuba and head towards the Florida Stratus by Monday. In Cyprus, at least 4 people have died after a huge fire raged on the East Mediterranean island for a second day. Interior Minister Nikos Nouri said victims are thought to be Egyptian nationals who had gone missing. Nouris termed the worst blaze in the history of Cyprus. He said the Greek and Israeli aircraft will join 11 other planes and helicopters in firefighting efforts later Sunday. The Environment Ministry says the fire has forced the evacuation of at least 8 mountain villages and destroyed several homes. The cause of the fire, which started around midday on Saturday, is yet unclear. Canadian authorities have ordered the residents of British Columbia to evacuate amid raging wildfires. Officials say 176 fires are active across the province, including 76 that were reported over the past 2 days. They said more than 1,300 homes have been ordered to evacuate. Authorities noted that the fires are expected to raise 100,000 hectares by the weekend. Meteorologists have warned of more lightning strikes that could stoke fires fanned by high winds. British Columbia has been recovering from an unprecedented heat wave, which has so far caused 719 deaths. The Brooklyn Museum in New York has returned 1,305 artifacts to Costa Rica. They were looted during the construction of a railway and brought to the United States in the 19th or early 20th century. More in this report.
An unfinished tombstone, a large ceramic vase painted with beeswax, human representations, and ancient tools to process corn are artifacts from a collection of pieces returned to Costa Rica. It is the second time the Brooklyn Museum in New York City has returned pieces, some older than 2,000 years, to the Central American country.
The pieces were at the Brooklyn Museum because when the Atlantic Railroad was built and Minor Keith extracted the pieces at the time, we have an approximate. There is no clear inventory, but there is an approximate of 16,000 pieces that were taken out of the country. So when these pieces were extracted and reached the United States, Minor Keith distributed them to different museums.
Although the pieces arrived at the end of last year, the handing over of the artifacts was delayed by customs in Costa Rica. Since their return, archaeologists at the National Museum have been in awe and spent the last couple of months listing all the pieces which only now have been displayed.
The important thing about these pieces is that we also have stone and ceramic pieces within the collection. What do I mean? For example, we have stone pieces that were unfinished or were in the process of being made.
There are still more artifacts from Costa Rica and Brooklyn and other museums in the United States.
In the English city of Oxford, a host of events marked Alice's Day and the 150th anniversary of Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass. Alice's Day is a festival held every year to celebrate all things Alice in Wonderland.
A street theater featuring a giant puppet of Alice and talking flowers attracted young visitors to share the magic of Carroll's creations. Some events were held online to allow participation in line with England's COVID-19 restrictions. Lewis Carroll was a lecturer in mathematics at Oxford's Christ Church. According to the university, his stories incorporate some of the animals, friends, and places from around the city. Published in December 1871, Through the Looking Glass tells of Carroll's much-loved heroine, Alice. She goes through a mirror and then travels back in time to help her friend, the flamboyant Mad Hatter. A sequel to Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, it is known as the first of Alice's stories to have gained popularity.
For the latest news and details, you can follow us on our social media at indus.news.